Okay, so hopefully this is the final video on part 3, rather. What is the difference between an empath, a codependent, and a highly sensitive person? And I'm kind of delirious. It's like 2:30 in the morning. I didn't realize it was so late. So I'm going to try and wrap this up really quickly. So I was talking about codependency and what it is, just very briefly. I might be repeating myself a little bit here, but please bear with me. So commonly cited symptoms of codependency are intense and unstable interpersonal relationships, inability to tolerate being alone, accompanied by frantic efforts to avoid being alone. Okay, and then chronic feelings of boredom and emptiness, subordinating one's own needs to those of the person with whom one is involved, an overwhelming desire for acceptance and affection, external referencing, dishonesty and denial, and low self-worth. Okay, so you can see where this is clearly not, with the exception of low self-worth or feelings of low self-esteem, this isn't really reflective of what a highly sensitive person is, or who a highly sensitive person is, rather. Why are they connected? Why are they often referred to in the same sentence with empaths as well? Because I have found that codependency is really more addiction than sensitivity. It's really more about false, selfish needs rather than positive, loving, and truly supportive, selfish, quote-unquote, needs. So what kind of culture is it, just as a comment, just as a thought, as an aside, what kind of culture is it that we live in where codependency, which is a very sick, really toxic thing, gets smushed together with the term empath and the term highly sensitive person? And codependency can occur in any type of relationship. It's not just romantic. It can be family, work, friendship, you name it. Codependency is codependency is codependency. And there's something that happens in codependency called enmeshment. And I want to do a video on that. I'm going to do some more videos on terms that I use, glossary of terms, so that when I make other videos, people will say, oh, I can refer to this cluster of videos to understand where she's coming from, where she's at, and where she's going. So a lot of dysfunction, a lot of codependents hook up with people with personality disorders, primarily borderline and narcissistic, but not exclusive to that. A dysfunctional family is usually the culprit for this sort of thing, where the child becomes attuned to the parents' needs and feelings instead of the other way around. And having parents that don't want to commit to the reasonable sacrifices that children require. I'm very familiar with that. As I mentioned in another video, I come from a dysfunctional family, a lot of dysfunction, and needs were negated. So I'm still trying to separate, just on a personal note, I'm still trying to separate certain things about being a highly sensitive person and being an empath and having codependent experiences. I don't know where I would sit on the scale in terms of low to high levels of codependency, but it certainly played a role in my development or maladaptive aspects of development. So I'm trying to unwind the necklace that's been all jumbled up and knotted. And there's so much more to codependency. I can't put it into a brief video, but that's just an idea of where it comes from. there's a guy named Timon Cermak, who's a doctor who proposed that codependency be listed as a personality disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So it's still probably up on the table for consideration. It's not off the table completely. But he proposed the following criteria for the disorder: that it's a continued investment of self-esteem and the ability to control both oneself and others in the face of serious adverse consequences, an assumption of responsibility for meeting others' needs to the exclusion of acknowledging one's own, anxiety and boundary distortions about intimacy and separation, enmeshment in relationships with personality disordered, chemically dependent, or other codependent and or impulse disordered individuals. Oh, how we love to take care of them. 3 or more of the following: excessive reliance on denial, constriction of emotions with or without dramatic outbursts, depression, hypervigilance, compulsions, anxiety, substance abuse, has been or is the victim of recurrent physical or sexual abuse, stress, related medical illnesses, and has remained in a primary relationship with an active substance abuser for at least 2 years without seeking outside help. So that's codependence in a nutshell. I mean, a very brief nutshell. But then there's the term empath that I want to get to ever so briefly. And maybe I should make another video on that. Just to, because we're going to run out of time on this one, I'm sure. I'll see you in a minute.